Hello, this is episode 303 of Stand Up with Pete Dominic Daily. Joining me today, former federal prosecutor Glenn Kirschner and writer, columnist, Daily Beast columnist now, Wajahat Ali. I am Pete Dominic. Time to stand up with me. Stand up. Yeah, thank you for getting me started, John Carroll. Always appreciate all the contributions to the podcast, music and jingles and show ideas. I like to say it's our show where you can be a producer and contact me anytime. Stand up with Pete at gmail.com. Tell me who you'd like me to talk to, what you'd like to hear on the show. I produce it all by my lonesome here in the shed of my backyard, just north of New York City, Rockland County, New York. The solar-powered shed. The snow is gone, mostly. So my energy bill is back down. And here I am in the shed talking to you about all of the most important issues that affect you and your family and your community, your country, your planet. Tonight, we gather online, virtually, the Stand Up with Pete Dominic Community Hangout. It's the happy hour, Thursdays at 8 Eastern. If you're not a paid subscriber, then sign up now. Go to patreon.com/Pete Dominic or the paid subscription link in the show notes and sign up and join us and hang out with us tonight at 8 Eastern. The link for the Zoom is right there in the email that you also get every day as a member. And join us anytime on the Discord platform. Here at the top, I always like to go through the news. I'll put this news segment up against any other major corporate news segment. To be fair, I use some of their audio and reporting. But it's the last 24 hours in news, sound bites, lots to get to from yesterday. And thank you very much again for listening today. I hope you're hanging in there, doing all right, practicing mindfulness, staying in the moment. Thank you for everybody who paid high compliments, kind words about my conversation with Steve Kiernan, veteran who lost his legs in Iraq in 2008. Was it 2008, Steve? If you're listening, sorry if I get that wrong, but great conversation. Always love to talk with veterans and people with backgrounds and experiences that I can't relate to, and that many of you can't as well. Less than 1% of America's families have veterans in their families, and so always very important to talk to someone like Steve, and I really enjoyed it, and so did so many of you. Thank you very much. All right, the last 24 hours in news, nuts as always. President Biden called the governor of Texas's decision to relax coronavirus restrictions Neanderthal thinking. Here is that from the Oval Office.
Texas, I think it's a big mistake. Look, I hope everybody's realized by now, these masks make a difference. We are on the cusp of being able to fundamentally change the nature of this disease because of the way in which we're able to get vaccines in people's arms. We've been able to move that all the way up to the end of May to have enough for every American, to get every adult American to get a shot. And the last thing we need is the Neanderthal thinking that in the meantime, everything's fine, take off your mask. Forget it. It still matters.
It's Texas and Mississippi who are lifting the bans and opening back up. Texas getting most of the bad press. Here is Dr. Anthony Fauci. He was on CNN. He was out front with Aaron Burnett. This is the last 24. She goes out front. Anderson Cooper keeps him honest. There's a no spin zone. Oh, boy. A lot to keep up with. Anyway, Aaron Burnett asked Dr. Fauci about the announcement from the Texas and Mississippi governors.
You know, Aaron, I don't know why they're doing it, but it certainly, from a public health standpoint, is ill-advised. If you look at right now the curves of the diminution of infections that are going down, it's reached a point where the last 7 days it's plateaued. We've been to this scene before months and months ago when we tried to open up the country and open up the economy. When certain states did not abide by the guidelines, we had rebounds which were very troublesome. What we don't need right now is another surge. So just pulling back on all of the public health guidelines that we know work. And if you take a look at the curve, we know it works. It just is inexplicable why you would want to pull back now. I understand the need to want to get back to normality, but you're only going to set yourself back if you just completely push aside the public health guidelines, particularly when we're dealing with anywhere from 55 to 70,000 infections per day in the United States. That's a very, very high baseline.
Aaron Burnett then played audio of Texas Senator John Cornyn for Dr. Fauci to respond to. I thought this was good and worth sharing with you.
But at some point, the government needs to quit making arbitrary rules that do not have any demonstrable connection with the public health.
What do you say to that? He says that you're making arbitrary rules that do not have any demonstrable connection with public health.
Well, first of all, they're not arbitrary. They're based on evidence and data from science. We know that these interventions work. It's very clear. When you implement them, you see the cases go down. When you pull back, the cases go up. What you want to do is get down to a low enough baseline so that when you do pull back on the public health measures, that you won't have a surge, because when you have a level of virus that's low enough, as you get these little blips, you can contain them. In addition, we have every single day that goes by, every week, we get more and more people vaccinated. So now's not the time to pull back. Now's the time to really crush this by doing both public health measures and accelerating the vaccinations like we're doing. So that's the reason why I said a moment ago that it's ill-advised. It's not arbitrary, it's not empiric, and it's based on scientific data.
And one more clip from Aaron Burnett on CNN's Out Front with Dr. Anthony Fauci. She asked him about the news that President Trump, then former President Trump, yay, former, and Melania, former First Lady, that they got vaccinated while he was still in the White House. And she asked him about what he thought about that.
No, Aaron, I was not. I was not aware that he was vaccinated.
So when you think about that, I mean, obviously I know you weren't talking all the time, but you were the public face of talking about this. How big of an opportunity did he miss to convince a certain group of the population, who, by the way, are still some of the most vaccine resistant people, hesitant people, I should say? He could have made a big difference for those people if he had talked about this, couldn't he?
Certainly, there's no doubt in anyone's mind that former President Trump is very, very popular among his constituencies, who numbers in the tens of millions of people. That would have been an extraordinarily good opportunity to get a signal to the people who would clearly have listened to him the way they listened to him in many other ways. He has a great deal of influence. It was just, unfortunately, a lost opportunity, because he could have gotten a lot of people who are hesitant about getting vaccinated. I'm sorry he didn't do that.
All right, Dr. Anthony Fauci on CNN with Aaron Burnett. I thought that was important from the last 24. The big deal today is that it's March 4th, which I'm not sure holds a lot of significance for any main reason. I don't know. What are March 4th holidays? Let me just see. It's National Grammar Day, National Hug a GI Day, and World Obesity Day. Okay. So other than that, it's just the day that a lot of conspiracy theorists think that Donald Trump is going to have his actual real inauguration. It's been 6 weeks since the inauguration of President Joe Biden. And it seems, I think, that if Donald Trump's going to ever be president again, he'd have to run again. Unfortunately, that's still a possibility. But a lot of his strongest supporters and followers and cult members support this conspiracy theory that he's coming back today. He's somehow going to be returned to power. And I don't even know you need to go into the basis of this ridiculousness. But the issue, I think, that's important is that the Capitol Police officially warned yesterday that, quote, "We have obtained intelligence that shows a possible plot to breach the Capitol by an identified militia group on Thursday, March 4th. We are taking the intelligence seriously." Yeah, and then the House scrapped a plan for a session today after the security officials warned of a possible plot to breach the Capitol again. So pretty horrible stuff. And so back on CNN with Jay Tepper, the lead the lead with Jake Tapper. He had Congressman Republican Michael McCall on, who's a Republican from Texas, who apparently is not completely batshit crazy. And Congressman McCall called on former President Donald Trump with the urging of Jake Tapper to condemn the far-right militias and QAnon extremists who are pushing this conspiracy theory that he's going to come back to power today, March 4th. Listen to that.
It seems to me that whether we're talking about the attack on January 6th or this possible attack tomorrow, President Trump, these people, these attackers, worship him. They love him. They think that they're doing this in his name. Do you think Donald Trump should be more forcefully saying clearly, I'm not going to be inaugurated tomorrow? Joe Biden was elected fair and square. I mean, I feel like that could potentially quell a lot of these violent threats.
Well, I think President Trump has a responsibility to tell them to stand down. This threat is credible and it's real. It's a right-wing militia group that believes that because the original inaugural day was March 4th until the 20th Amendment passed, they think this is the true inauguration day and that President Trump should be inaugurated tomorrow. And that is the threat we face right now.
That's the threat that one Republican thinks we face right now. But over in Fox News and right-wing media, they are really fired up and worried about cancel culture and Mr. Potato Head and Dr. Seuss. Here's a mashup of some of the right-wing media from the last 24 put together by Chris Hayes producers at MSNBC's All In. And let me just warn you, trigger warning, ooga, ooga.
Who gets appalled at a furry little doll? Yeah, the cancel tornado is always looking for its next victim, and now it's the Muppets.
It is outrageous and appalling.
Do you think we'll have a Muppets commission to look at this? Would it be bipartisan?
I love the Muppets, and I don't care if they told the jokes in front of a Confederate flag, a burning church. It was funny.
Now, from the toy world, was it a case of crossed wires or a major corporate U-turn when news broke that the company Hasbro was losing the Mr. from Mr. Potato Head?
If I wanted to buy one, and let's say I had the boy at home and I wanted the girl.
And the money.
The box is going to say Potato Head. How am I going to know which one I'm getting?
Buy Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head because it's the end of an era. It is the end of freedom in America.
The hits just keep coming. More cancellations may be ahead for Dr. Seuss.
It follows last week's debacle with Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head going gender neutral.
I haven't gotten past the assassination of Mr. Potato Head. That one I still haven't gotten past. And now they're trying to take out Dr. Seuss. Come on, John.
No.
These are the icons I grew up with.
Canceling Dr. Seuss isn't stupid. It's intentional. They're bailing Dr. Seuss not because he was a racist, but precisely because he wasn't.
I was going to go to the gym after this hit, but I don't have to now. I'm already fired up. That is absurd. You're telling me that the actual priorities of the Democrats is renaming a post office and now canceling Dr. Seuss?
This week alone, they canceled Mr. Potato Head. This week alone, they canceled the Muppets. They're canceling Dr. Seuss from reading programs. I mean, these are books. I literally know The Cat in the Hat by heart without the book there because I read it so many times to my children. These things are not racist. You have Oreo Cookie chiming in on trans rights.
This week they canceled Foghorn Leghorn. What's next? They're going to cancel Papa Smurf, huh? Are they going to compare him to Epstein, huh? What's next? Are they going to go through the whole cast of Growing Pains and cancel everybody? Let's go to the cancel scoreboard. Let's look up and see who's been canceled this week. Shut up. Shut it. Oh, my gosh. I'm not going to say that's what they were all wrapped up in, but the fact that they would make any of those remarks at all is so pathetic and weak and hack. And Madison Cawthorn saying that's the young congressman who's a racist and like everybody that knows him hates him and he's disabled. He got in an accident and lost the use of his legs and then like lied about the guy who saved him. The guy's a horrible guy. And he's the one who said, I was getting out of the gym, but I'm already fired up. Really? Really? You're going to talk about you going to the gym? I would never do anything like that. Although I did just do a couple sets of pull-ups while I was listening to that clip. All right, so what do I have next for you? Oh, this is beautiful. I love this one. This is the governor of Georgia. His name is Brian Kemp, and he's awful. And he is a huge supporter of Donald Trump, which is how he rode his way to the governor's mansion in Georgia, beating Stacey Abrams. A lot of people, a lot of evidence that there was tremendous amount of voter suppression. But of course, she came back and helped win the Senate, and maybe she'll take his seat next time. But anyway, Brian Kemp was a huge sycophant of Donald Trump's, and then Trump lost Georgia and went after Brian Kemp, and really ugly. And I mean, he repeatedly attacked the governor of Georgia after the election for not going along with his awful lies and conspiracy theories. And he said he regretted endorsing Governor Kemp. He called Kemp hapless as he tried pressuring him on the election results. He suggested that Governor Kemp had something to hide and said that Kemp and other Republicans would be to blame if Republicans lost both special elections. He shared a tweet saying Kemp will, quote, soon be going to jail. He demanded that Governor Kemp resign for not going along with his election lie, and said during his rally the night before the runoffs, he'd returned to Georgia to campaign against Kemp. Trump also attacked Kemp at the now infamous January 6th rally right before the riots. And then Brian Kemp, like so many before him, went right back to shine Trump's shoes. Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, Mike Pence, Jeff Sessions, Mike Pence. Governor Brian Kemp on Fox News with Neil Cavuto saying he would still vote for Donald Trump after all that.
Real quickly, Donald Trump is the 24 nominee for Republicans. Would you support him?
Absolutely. I'm going to support the nominee. As I said again, I work very hard for the president. I think his idea will be part of our party for a long time in the future. And Republicans, we need to have a big tent. I mean, there's a lot of great ideas out there. We're not always going to get along. But I think the president deserves a lot of credit, and he's not going away.
Fair enough. Brian Kemp, Georgia governor. Very good seeing you, Governor. Thank you very, very much.
Neil Cavuto. So smooth. Well, fair enough. Fair enough. Is it fair enough, really? Donald Trump attacked Brian Kemp, said he's going to send him to jail. Attacked his daughter as well. I forgot about that. I mean, then Brian, is it worth it? The power, the pursuit of that power without the dignity, is it worth it? It's crazy. He insults your wife and your kid, and then you say, I support him? What kind of a person? What kind? All right, well, I don't know. What kind of a person? How about that for a segue to the governor of New York, who yesterday gave a long opening, had a press conference, took a bunch of questions. I'm not covering it extensively, but I do have a long clip here for you of Andrew Cuomo, if you're interested, and then a long response by my friend S.E. Cupp on CNN, if you're interested in that. And that's the final thing I'll do before to the news dump. But here he is yesterday, just an excerpt from his opening statement. The governor of New York has now been accused by 3 women of doing inappropriate things, sexual harassment, I think it falls under. And here is Andrew Cuomo, if you can stomach this. I think I listened to it. I thought it was interesting. I really liked what S.E. Cupp had to say after. So here it is.
Now, the lawyers say I shouldn't say anything when you have a pending review until that review is over. I understand that. I'm a lawyer, too. But I want New Yorkers to hear from me directly on this. First, I fully support a woman's right to come forward. And I think it should be encouraged in every way. I now understand that I acted in a way that made people feel uncomfortable. It was unintentional. And I truly and deeply apologize for it. I feel awful about it. And frankly, I am embarrassed by it. And that's not easy to say. But that's the truth. But this is what I want you to know, and I want you to know this from me directly. I never touched anyone inappropriately. I never touched anyone inappropriately. I never knew at the time that I was making anyone feel uncomfortable. I never knew at the time I was making anyone feel uncomfortable. And I certainly never, ever meant to offend anyone or hurt anyone or cause anyone any pain. That is the last thing I would ever want to do. I ask the people of this state to wait for the facts from the Attorney General's report before forming an opinion. Get the facts, please, before forming an opinion. And the Attorney General is doing that review. I will fully cooperate with it, and then you will have the facts. And make a decision when you know the facts. I also want you to know that I have learned from what has been an incredibly difficult situation for me as well as other people. And I've learned an important lesson. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for whatever pain I caused anyone. I never intended it. And I will be the better for this experience. Thank you.
All right. And then he took questions. I don't know what you think. I'm not buying it. I'm just not buying it. He just has always seemed like a creep. He's always seemed like a guy who loves having power and loves wielding power and loves being a bully and threatening people. And I'm sorry. I don't know about you. I just don't have a lot of mercy for powerful men or men in general at this point. Have you not been paying any attention? Have you not been listening at all for the past 4 or 5 years or ever at all? Did no one talk to you and tell you? I mean, I really do think most men are good. I do think that. I think most people are good. I think most men are good. Maybe you don't. Maybe it's too much of a generalization to even say. But most people don't even, I don't think, touch at work. You don't touch anybody. Nobody's touching anymore. And that's fine. You know why? Because nobody wants really to be touched for the most part. You know, generally when somebody might want to be touched. Maybe there was some tragedy that happened or something. But most of the time, no touching. All right? And you don't talk to women who are 20, 30 years younger than you about sex at all. Unless it's you are people who work in the field of sex or sex education or something that's part of your job, but not in a personal way. I mean, come on. I just don't have a lot of patience or mercy for it. And I wanted to say a few things about that. I don't do much of my own commentary on the podcast these days, except for during the conversations with my guests sometimes. But I feel real uncomfortable with this guy and the way that he behaves in general. And I always have. But hearing the allegations that these women have brought up that were reported at the time, by the way, they were reported at the time and they didn't go anywhere. That's my understanding. Maybe I'm missing something. Here is S.E. Cupp, who was on CNN last night on this.
Well, I heard a lot of the same justifications. I didn't intend it that way. I didn't know I was doing it. An apology is nice, but not when it's couched in all of those codicils and conditions. What he said today, punctuated by the fact that he will not resign, no matter what this independent investigation finds, I don't think was very satisfying to any of the women who have accused him of unwanted behaviors.
You know what? I want to hear more from S.E. Cupp.
Also, allegedly, he did some of these things in public in front of other people, and that really goes to this other part of, ongoing sexual harassment, that this culture of protecting powerful people still exists. That's still a huge problem, that men can act this way brazenly in public in front of others, or be told this behavior wasn't great and she's complaining, and then but listen, there were a number of infuriating parts of that. There seems to be this idea that women as a gender, an entire gender, we're just like perpetually in a state of confusion. We don't get your jokes. We misinterpret you constantly. We have no sense of humor, and we're just unreliable witnesses. And that is adding insult to injury. The idea, we are not confused, right? Okay, we take stock of everything that's going on, and believe me, we would love to be able to devote like 100% of our attention to our work and not navigating all of these signals from our male coworkers and bosses. Why does he want to have this meeting in his hotel room? Why did he call me at home? Why is he constantly talking about my boyfriend? Why is he comparing me to his ex-girlfriend?
Okay.
Why is he always asking? I mean,
right.
We shouldn't have to deal with that stuff.
I'm
and
glad
no
you
one
said
should
that.
tell the governor that that's inappropriate.
Don Lemon trying to get in there. Okay, I've had enough. Yeah, prattling on. I want to say things and move on. You've been talking for a very long time. I liked it. I just actually DM'd and emailed S.E. Cup, and we're going to get together next week. She said, hey, I want to come back on the podcast. Ours was one of the most satisfying conversations I've had of late. She was on last month, I think, a few weeks back. And I told her, unfortunately, I'm only doing male guests this month to counter Women's History Month. So, no, I said I'd like to have her on early next week if she can do it. So we're going to hopefully do that. All right. But right now, we're going to do a news dump. And today's news dump jingle comes again from Pete Coe. And it rocks and it's awesome.
When the cassowary pecks out your eye, when the gender reveal party goes awry, you got the news dump. Yeah.
When the gender reveal party goes awry, you've got the news dump. All right, let's go to it. Rapid fire headlines, not politics, not COVID. It's a news dump. Let's start in Boca Chica, Texas, where SpaceX's futuristic Starship that everybody on the internet said looked exactly like a dick. I mean, there was nonstop penis jokes. It looked like it aced its touchdown yesterday, but then it exploded on the landing pad with so much force that it was hurled into the air. The failure occurred just minutes after SpaceX had declared success. And unlike the previous two test flights, the shiny bullet-shaped rocket ship that looks exactly like a dick, apparently, remained intact this time at touchdown, prompting SpaceX commentator John Innsbrucker to declare, third time's a charm, as the saying goes. Okay. He also declared that his rocket ship looks like a penis. All right, sorry. The Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources approved 1,547 permits to kill a quota of 119 wolves during a week-long hunt. But instead, 216 wolves were killed in less than 60 hours, according to the New York Times. That's 82% more than the limit allowed, and conservationists are rightly furious, and now so am I. This is horrible. And I want to actually talk to somebody about this. This is really bad news. This doesn't sit well with the Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission, apparently. Here's a quote from Rep. Dylan Jennings. We could be looking at major implications for Wisconsin wolf packs for years to come. Something terribly wrong when happened in Wisconsin to the wolves. That's a sad story. And let's head to Iraq, shall we? At least 10 rockets slammed into a base housing U.S. and other coalition troops in western Iraq on Wednesday. Military officials said it was not known if there were any casualties, but the Iraqi military said there were no significant losses. This is the first such attack since the U.S. struck Iran-aligned militia targets along the Iraq-Syria border last week. and this is heating up. This is not good. I don't like this. We're going to probably retaliate again. By the way, I heard Martha Raddatz on ABC the other day saying, in reaction to this, she analyzed it. Martha Raddatz said, the U.S. has to retaliate to the attack that came from Western Syria. And they actually don't. That was her putting in her opinion. And I didn't like that because it's war and the U.S. doesn't have to retaliate. There's all kinds of options. I know. I watch Madam Secretary. Have I mentioned it? Okay, moving on. Apparently, Dr. Oz actually did some doctoring. Dr. Oz saved a man who collapsed at Newark Liberty International Airport. What probably really happened is that a better doctor saved the man, and then Dr. Oz showed up for the cameras. The celebrity doctor hosts a daytime television talk. You know what? Screw it. Good for you, Dr. Oz. I'm glad you saved the guy's life. I'm sorry for making fun of you, but I don't like your program, and the things that you've done and said have often been accurate and done damage. Moving on. I like this story because I like this store. Arts and crafts retailer Michaels is going private, and I mean, I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but I like that store. The retail chain is based in Texas and said Wednesday that it's agreed to be acquired by some kind of equity management firm for $5 billion. And does that mean they're just going to sell it all off piece by piece, craft by craft, styrofoam ball and ribbon by hot glue? I love that store. I like craft stores. Please don't kill Michaels. I don't understand this story. Moving on. Google has announced it's going to end the sale of ads using individual web tracking data. It says it won't develop new ways to follow individual users across the internet after it phases out existing ad tracking technology from Chrome browsers. It's no longer going to be doing that and try harder to protect user privacy. You think? You buy that? Are they really changing their ways at Google? That's an interesting story that we should talk more about. China is saying that calls for the 2022 Winter Olympics boycott are doomed to fail. A government spokesman said that these calls for boycotting the Beijing Winter Olympics on human rights grounds are doomed to failure. That's also an interesting story to be following. I haven't heard those calls get that loud, but it'll be interesting to see what develops with the Olympics in China. And finally, the state of Mississippi has been ordered to pay $500,000 to a black man who was wrongfully imprisoned more than 22 years ago. How about that? Curtis Flowers was released from prison in December 2019, months after the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that a district attorney had excluded black jurors from his trials. And he spent years on death row. Unbelievable story. And I'm going to be talking to someone else that's happened to as well coming up, because Professor Eric Siegel just introduced me to a guy that's happened to. What a massive injustice. All right, that is your news dump. And now it's time to get to my first guest. I've got a great conversation coming up with Wajahat Ali next. But first, my conversation with former federal prosecutor Glenn Kirschner, who has now got a massive presence, a great channel on YouTube. He's on Twitter at Glenn Kirschner 2. He's an MSNBC legal analyst, and you can support him on Patreon. And I always love talking to Glenn. I had a bunch of questions for him. I want you to sign this letter that we talk about here at the top. There's links to it in the show notes. On Twitter at Glenn Kirschner 2. Here it is, everybody. The always awesome Glenn Kirschner with the Kirschner Report. I decided. Ladies and gentlemen, there he is, Glenn Kirschner. Glenn, thank you very much for joining me. I have a billion questions for you.
Happy to be here, Pete.
All right. First and foremost, what is this letter that you have written that you are circulating and that you want sent and signed by everybody and sent to all the state's attorneys general? Because I think this is interesting and exciting. I haven't talked with you about it.
Yeah. So the way I see it, grassroots are the strongest roots, and they may be the only roots we have left these days. So we put together, I have this core group of activists, of democracy-loving folks. We call ourselves Team Justice. And we've drafted a letter to all 50 state attorneys general, urging them to open investigate deaths in their jurisdictions. And I highlight like 3 pieces of evidence that give prosecutors what's called adequate predication, which is a fancy term to say there's enough evidence to investigate possible wrongdoing. And then I set out in very simple terms the law generally surrounding negligent homicide or criminally reckless homicide. And we have signatories from all 50 states, citizens from all 50 states. We've got tens of thousands at this point. And we're getting ready to send these out. We're going to send them out to the state attorneys general. We're going to send them out to each governor, just CC them saying, by the way, we're making this ask of your AG. And we're also going to send it out as a CC to the federal legislators in each state. Because Donald Trump of Americans, and trust me, Pete, if I know nothing else, I know homicide liability. There is homicide liability for these preventable COVID deaths, and the attorneys general need to get after it.
Have you seen or been involved in a case like this with an executive of any sort at any level? I'm thinking of what's his name in Michigan, who has just been brought up on charges. Rick Snyder on the Flint water contamination case.
Yeah. Have I been involved in anything like this? I would say no. Now, I've talked with attorneys general over the years in my capacity as chief of the Homicide Section in Washington, D.C. at the U.S. Attorney's Office, because we would have matters in common with various jurisdictions, but I was never directly involved in urging them. But you know what? This has to be done.
All right. So everybody go sign that letter and right. I mean, that's what you want. Signatures. Everybody can sign this, right?
It's the pinned tweet on my timeline, both the letter, which you can read, and then a simple link. And I am incompetent, as you know, Pete. Even I can click on the link and it takes 60 seconds to sign the letter. All we ask is your name, your state of residence, your zip code, and an email address, which we will never give to anybody. This is not a money-making proposition. This is a democracy-making proposition where everybody can get involved.
So check that out. Glenn Kirschner 2 is his Twitter, and if you have any questions, it's all linked in the show notes. I wanted to talk with you. You've been making great videos, helpful, insightful videos at your YouTube page. And by the way, you have a huge following on Twitter and YouTube, especially hundreds of thousands of followers and Team Justice members now, many of them. How much of your following are themselves legal experts, and do you hear from and debate and discuss with the people that you've met through your social media and YouTube?
Yeah, quite a few. I mean, people in all sorts of different legal disciplines that, frankly, I don't know that much about. I was a criminal guy, right? I was largely a homicide guy, a RICO guy in DC. But I mean, there are civil litigators, and we're talking about possible class actions. So there is a lot of expertise out there. So I learn from my followers as most guys get more than they learn from me.
So I just clicked on your YouTube page. That's awesome that you have that kind of network. I love that you can kind of crowdsource all of your ideas when you're putting out your commentary. And I'm sure you hear from thousands of people all the time. So yesterday, or 2 days ago now, I guess, when our conversation drops, FBI Director Christopher Wray testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee about what the FBI knew and when it knew it regarding the insurrection on January 6th. First of all, just take a broad view of how important these investigations are. And my big question is, where the hell has Christopher Wray been? I mean, after 9/11, after almost every other event, we saw the heads of every national security agency giving press conferences like daily, what we knew. I mean, something like updates on the suspect about the pipe bomber. So how important are these investigations, and where has Chris Wray been for the last 2 months?
Where has Chris Wray been for his entire term as director of the FBI? Pete, I think one of the most significant failings that we experienced in the Trump presidency were the failures of both our law enforcement community and our intelligence community to hold an obviously, transparently criminal president accountable and his criminal family members, and his criminal cabinet members. That was Chris Wray's responsibility as the director of the FBI. That's the law enforcement agency tasked with investigating executive branch crimes, even though it's part of the executive branch. I've taken a wait-and-see attitude about Chris Wray for a very long time, and I've heard lots of people whose opinions I credit say he's a good man, and he is being constrained by Bill Barr and Donald Trump. I get some of that. But at some point, you have to man up and protect the American people and democracy. So you ask, how important is this investigation? Well, if we care about the future of our democracy, if we care about deterring tomorrow's insurrectionist attack, then there is no more important criminal investigation. And it's been headed up by a peon, I think that's his title, the acting U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, a Bill Barr acolyte by the name of Tim Sherwin, who is out as of today. And my very good friend, who I served with for decades, Channing Phillips, today is the acting United States attorney for the District of Columbia. So the residents of D.C. and the people of the United States have much to celebrate today, given that Channing Phillips is taking the reins at the DC U.S. Attorney's Office.
Wow, that's big news. I didn't realize that. And what can you say about Channing? Why does this person make a difference?
Because he is now the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. That is the office taking the lead on the investigation and the prosecution of the insurrection at the Capitol. And he is not a Trump Barr loyalist the way the last two acting U.S. attorneys were. Those would be the ones who killed the Mike Flynn case, doing a favor, though, for Donald Trump's criminal associate, who tried to tank the Roger Stone sentencing. And importantly, Pete, those two acting U.S. attorneys in combination, Tim Shea and Michael Sherwin, they had the criminal referrals sent to them by a bipartisan committee of the Senate Intelligence Committee, criminal referrals of Don Jr., Jared Kushner, Steve Bannon, Eric Prince, and Sam Clovis, and those investigations died under the leadership of those Bill Barr acolytes. I have some hope that those investigations are going to be revisited now.
Oh, wow. That is a great answer. So now you've got Merrick Garland, who will be confirmed as the Attorney General, I think most people think. Then you've got Chris Wray at FBI, and Channing now, you're introducing us to his work. And so there are questions for most of us, about jurisdiction. Who's in charge of prosecuting? Because I like what Merrick Garland said. What did you think of what Merrick Garland said during his confirmation hearing about being focused on January 6th and whose responsibilities are here? Because I have questions about the conflict between the AG and the head of the FBI and who's in charge in the actual investigation work.
Yeah, so great question. So first of all, Merrick Garland, I think, is the right man for the moment. Pete, I don't know if you and I have talked about Merrick Garland.
I don't think so.
But let me sum him up, because this is really important. He's about to become our top cop and our top prosecutor. So he came from my former office, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia. He cut his public corruption teeth as a prosecutor on the Marion Barry case. He prosecuted Marion Barry for the infamous, she set me up crack cocaine case. He cares deeply about public corruption crimes. He then got his domestic terrorism bona fides when he oversaw the Oklahoma City bombing case, and he did a brilliant job. One of my favorite quotes from him when he came in and took over that investigation and supervised that prosecution, he said to the American people, "We will hold everyone accountable who's responsible for bombing the federal building in Oklahoma City, but we will do it in a way that honors the Constitution." That gives me patriotic goosebumps. That's the way prosecutors are supposed to behave. He then oversaw the Unabomber case. He then oversaw the Atlanta Olympics bombing case. And then he was a federal judge for 24 years, right. And he has few critics. This man is the real deal. He is the perfect marriage of a public corruption prosecutor and a domestic terrorism prosecutor. And Donald Trump is the unholy union of domestic. So Merrick Garland is the right man for the moment. He will be the de facto lead of the investigation and prosecution of the insurrectionists. And what he said during his confirmation hearing, or at least the hearing in front of the Judiciary Committee, in response to Senator Whitehouse's questions, he said, and I'm paraphrasing, we will not just be looking at investigating, going after the people who unlawfully entered the Capitol, the insurrectionists. We will be going after the people who funded it, the people who organized it, and the kingpins. And the kingpin insurrectionist, the general giving his ugly troops the order to attack that day, was Donald Trump.
Well, see, I don't buy it right now. I don't buy the case of the organized insurrection. It still looks to me like a riot where a bunch of mad people were encouraged to go to the Capitol, but no one said break in and do this and do that. And it's really important to have an investigation to see what kind of premeditated organization or plans there were. But I still don't see like a criminal case for people that are higher up the chain in terms of organizers. I see that everybody that broke in, that vandalized, that, did all kinds of horrible things, fought with cops. Yeah, got it. But I wonder about the case being made about, up the chain, upstream and the organizers. I don't see it yet myself.
I don't necessarily see it for the people who, for example, funded the buses, whether that was, Justice Thomas's wife or others who funded.
Yeah, that's right. It's so crazy.
They're like the travel agents for the insurrectionists. Isn't that lovely? I don't know that I see it for them. You know who I do see it for, Pete? For Donald Trump. Why? Because you need two things. You need a criminal act and you need criminal intent. The election was not fraudulent and was not rigged and was not stolen from Donald Trump's supporters. But Donald Trump lied to them all and told them it was. So he encouraged them to do what? To go up the street to the building and stop the steal. Stop those people from doing what they are doing that represents a theft of your vote. That is a criminal act, urging them to do that. It wasn't organized and pre-planned necessarily that we're going to break in and you're going to hunt for Pence and I'm going to hunt for Pelosi. But it was all inspired. That unlawful conduct was inspired by Donald Trump. So you have a criminal act. What is the criminal intent? What is the proof of mens rea, right? A guilty mind. That is supplied in spades by the fact that Donald Trump launched a fraud and attacked the Capitol. That's what gives him criminal intent. Everything Donald Trump has done, frankly, proves his criminal intent for the 4 years he occupied the Oval Office. But this one in particular, because everything he said and did was launched from a platform of fraud. He lied to everybody. That gives him criminal intent.
Is it what we saw with the House? People were pretty upset that the impeachment didn't continue, didn't call witnesses, didn't go further, didn't make the case, harder for, against Donald Trump in the end. But the answer to that was always, well, yes, but this is impeachment and there'll be an investigation. Do you really think that Merrick Garland is going to go after Donald Trump on the January 6th insurrection?
Yes, and here's why. We are holding the foot soldiers accountable every day. The foot soldiers are the insurrectionists who actually unlawfully entered the Capitol, did buku damage, assaulted people, killed a police officer, and hunted for Mike Pence to hang him. Okay? So we are holding them accountable in court. Every day we're charging more, we're indicting more, we're pleading them out, and we're going to go to trial against hundreds and hundreds of them. I believe Merrick Garland feels the way any career prosecutor feels, who is sworn to uphold and faithfully execute the laws of the country. You don't hold all of the foot soldiers accountable for carrying out the illegal order of their boss, their commander, their God, without holding the general accountable. The general is the one who is most responsible and most culpable in launching the attack on the Capitol. I do not believe Merrick Garland will allow us to become a country that holds all of the foot soldiers accountable, but lets go the guiltiest leader of that unholy cabal. I don't think he wants that kind of a Department of Justice. I think he wants that kind of America.
What does it mean that the Trump campaign itself paid $3.5 million to the organizers of the, quote, Stop the Steal rally?
That's another piece of evidence in the criminal bucket that will hurt them.
Yeah. All right. Well, I love talking to you. I hope that you're right about all of this. I've been watching your videos on YouTube and hanging on your every word, and hope that you're right. But last question: what do you think about all of the other questions that were asked to Chris Wray? I'm pretty interested in that testimony because a lot of things came up that weren't necessarily about January 6th, and just these awful Ron Johnson. He's not on that committee. I don't think he got a question, but Hawley and Cruz, I think, did. And how do you phrase or articulate what it was like to see Senators Hawley and Senator Cruz, who were encouraging the insurrection, who were supporting the big lie, holding up the certification, raising his fist to the rally goers? It's such a terrible picture for him. What do you make of them asking questions to the head of the FBI about January 6th?
Yeah, if it wasn't such a deadly serious topic because people were assaulted and people lost their lives, both police officers and insurrectionists, it would qualify as comic relief, right? I mean, Cruz is complaining incessantly that the FBI didn't do enough to protect him against the attack that he instigated and supported and inspired. Hawley, for God's sake, sounded like every defense attorney I've ever encountered, like going on a fishing expedition to see how much incriminating information you have against me and my client, right? I mean, he was obsessed about, well, what kind of cell phone information do you have that might put me at the scene? I mean, that was just bizarre. And, then you have Bill Lee, who wants to talk about FISA warrants and Hillary's emails and Hunter's laptop.
Yeah.
It didn't have a lot to do with the attack on January 6th. And Ron Johnson, who was in an earlier hearing, was my favorite because he actually said what really happened was that Antifa, disguising themselves as Trump supporters, were the ones who instigated the Capitol Police, angered them, and then the Capitol Police overreacted and hurt all of the innocent Trump supporters. So basically, the Capitol Police brought this on themselves. It would qualify as comic relief if people hadn't died and our democracy hadn't been, there hadn't been an attempted overthrow.
I love that you went for each one of those senators and gave the specific issues with them. Glenn, it's so good to talk to you. Thank you very much for joining me. And as always, really, really appreciate it, pal. All right, there he goes, Glenn Kirschner. Go subscribe to his YouTube channel and follow him on Twitter. And as always, thank him for joining me here on the podcast. A lot of demands on his time. Everybody wants to talk to Glenn, and he's got his own things going on, lots going on for him. And I'm always happy when we connect. Really like that guy, and love how much work he's doing and how closely he's following all this stuff. All right, now moving on, I've got my friend who is now a columnist at the Daily Beast, a senior fellow at the Western State Center and Auburn Seminary. He's previously been a New York Times contributing op-ed writer, a CNN commentator. He's been a host for Huffington Post, a co-host at Al Jazeera. He also is a recovering attorney, he calls himself, a playwright as well. And he's currently working on his first book, Go Back to Where You Came From, and other helpful recommendations on how to become American, which is scheduled for next spring. He is on Twitter at Wajahat Ali, and he is always a great guest. We start with, lighting and skin color and photography, and then we get to so much more about cancel culture, and it's a great conversation. I love talking to Waj, and here is our latest.
It really accentuates the pink bald head.
Yes.
And the shininess.
Yes. I think this would not be the best light for you. Who am I kidding? Brown goes with everything. White is really problematic, white skin, isn't it?
No, you know what? Did you know that cameras were actually invented? Even cameras are racist in America because they were invented to skew to the white skin tone, right? Which is why, honestly, like if camera lenses and when it comes to photography, that's why you always hear in the lament of like black and brown women saying they don't know how to film us properly. They don't know how to light us properly.
Right.
Which is why Rihanna crushed it with her makeup line for black and brown skin tones, because the base was always the white skin tone. So actually cameras are good for you, a white man who controls everything.
Do you know how that is? Something about like the f-stop, the shutter, something about the way that how much light is let in or something like that? Because
the baseline of what was considered the moderate skin tone was the white skin tone, right? They never took into account black skin tone, brown skin tone. So like throughout the entire development process, the norm, as is with everything, what was considered mainstream was white skin tone. They just didn't even take into account other people, different skin tones. So that's why it's always kind of, it always makes the white skin look better. And for the rest of us, you just have to do a little bit more, some better lighting, a little bit more, care, someone who knows what they're doing, the makeup, because otherwise then we just look like clowns.
It's interesting because anything that we make, especially in America, skews towards kind of whiteness being the majority and being the affluent, the powerful, the idea makers in charge of everything. But you know what's really not racist is nature. I think the sun favors browner skin in general. I feel like the browner, the more. I mean, I'm sure there's actually been a lot of scholarly work on this, but since you brought up cameras and it seemed like you know what you're talking about, I feel like the sun is harsher on me than it is on you.
Is the great equalizer. Like we always joke that whites just crush it in their 20s and 30s, and then but then when it's 40s and 50s, black and brown grandmothers just take over. It's like aha. But then you're like, shoot, man, I'm 50 years old. I really could have had this smooth skin at 20. But yeah, that's like the sun is really harsh on the whites. I always feel a little bit bad. It's like. Yeah, I do.
You do. Thank you.
We empathize. We feel bad. I don't rejoice at all when I see white people complaining about the bad skin and the years of abuse that they took under the sun. It is a little bit. I think black skin, as I say, black don't crack. South Asian skin usually fares better under the harsh sun as we age. Would your empathy go as far as, seriously, like you saw me, I'm a stranger, we're both at the beach, and you look over, I don't have a hat on. Would you have enough empathy to be like, man, his dome has got to be cooking. I hope he's got sunscreen on it, or why doesn't that guy have a hat? Would you look and have enough empathy to be like, man, his skull is... Real talk, my wife and I say this all the time. Like we were at the beach a couple of months ago during the election, right? Because my daughter, because she had survived cancer, we had to wait for the trip. So we took the trip to Maryland. There was a beach, and then so we saw white people on the beach, and the whole time, just like a concerned parent, I'm like, oh, I hope they got lotion on. I hope they got lotion. I hope they wear them hats. That red, that's gonna hurt. They're gonna pay for that back in the day. They're gonna pay for that. This is gonna be a cost to that. And then that was me just being an empathetic South Asian man praying for the white skin that I saw around me sizzling under the sun to achieve my skin color in this racist country, which was so wild. Like my wife and I talked about this. So like all these racist people so desperately try to have my skin tone, and yet they hate me for my skin tone. This country is amazing.
It's always worth questioning. It's interesting to see my daughters come to that conclusion. I don't know if they saw it on a meme or on TikTok or somebody else, but I remember when my daughters came to that conclusion. Isn't it weird that we as white people want to get darker? And it was while my daughter was laying out under the sun that she had this view, and basically the same conclusion that you came to. It's always fascinating to watch someone kind of figure that out. Okay, so I want to talk about your latest work at the Daily Beast and your latest work on Clubhouse.
Yeah, my work. That sounds so shady.
Well, I see your clubhousing. You seem to be clubhousing, and I mean, can you say anything about it? Do you like it? Are you hosting?
I'm flirting with Clubhouse.
Right.
I'm flirting with it. I went on 2 dates. I co-hosted 2 Clubhouse dates. I got invited to be part of a threesome at a Clubhouse once or twice. So this is what I've seen. Clubhouse is like
it's like South by Southwest, but more moderated and controlled. And you get to have a South by Southwest panel on this thing called a phone. And we're finally using the phone for what it was meant to be used originally back in the day, because you and I are old enough. Remember, they used to talk to people on the phone. So it's like really comforting. But most clubhouses that I've kind of just dipped into are chaos. They're just terrible.
Oh, yeah.
Gambling and rambling. So I think someone like you, someone who hosts, would actually thrive at a clubhouse, because if you invite the right people to discuss a topic and you keep it somewhat guided,
yeah,
and you keep it within 45 minutes, and then you Q&A, it actually, what I've seen, the last couple ones I've done, I found it to be very smart. I just invited some smart people to talk, and people seem to enjoy
I want to do one where I create, and everybody there kind of knows this somehow, that this idea where if you're not good at talking, I'm going to rudely shove you off like the Sandman at the Apollo. So it's like me and you hosting, and then we bring people up who we don't know, and we're like, okay, thank you, we're good, you've said enough. Like you come in knowing I'm going to be really rude to you if you're not good. It's like the Gong Show.
Yeah, it's like Def Jam. You got to bring your A game.
It's terrifying. It would be then terrifying for anybody to take the mic, because they're like, oh my God, he's going to embarrass me.
We should do Clubhouse Def Jam, where it's just you and me as trolls. Def Jam for middle-aged. Actually, I was thinking about all these different show ideas and just like topics, and one of them was middle-aged dads during the pandemic.
Amen.
So I said me and Pete. So that was the first person that came up, like me and Pete, and we'll just try this out. But one of the good things about Clubhouse is, as the co-host, right, you can straight up mute people, which is so dope. You can just be like, no,
right,
and mute them.
That's satisfying.
And you can unmute them also. But
I wish I could do that at a live performance, doing comedy. Although I like when people heckle. I actually enjoy it because I don't have an act.
I do think there's something that if you can survive a heckler, then you can turn on a heckler, which I have done once. There's something deeply, like, you become Superman on stage.
Oh yeah, that's my bread and butter, dude. Bring it to me. You can't hurt me. I've been hurt in every which way. It's fine. You know, every slam you could possibly imagine. I'm ready for it. So I look like the alpha every time. All right, let me talk to you about your how's it going at the Daily Beast? You've published several articles. I'm enjoying all of them. How would you describe your beat? I like that you reach out to experts and get their quotes, and it's like opinionated journalism. It's really well done. I'm enjoying it, as I'm always enjoying your writing. But is there anything different? How could you talk about your column at the Beast, Daily Beast columnist, Wajahat Ali?
I enjoy it because I'm allowed to flex in depth on certain issues that I was not necessarily allowed to do at the New York Times. I mean, I still write for the Times. They still invited me. I'm no longer a contributing op-ed writer, but with the Times, I used to pitch them all this stuff, right? And they used to just say, whatever. And basically their columnists got to write this. So then I came in once in a while, and I was able to write about, I don't know, like dad issues or Muslim issues. But in Daily Beast, I can write about politics, and they don't give me a hard word length. But I still try to keep it tight. And like you said, I'm glad you noticed. I want to reach out to people. I want to make it an informed opinion so I can flex a little bit more. I can be more blunt in my analysis, the way I talk. But then I've also tried to make it a place where, it's not just Waj. Like he reached out to 4 or 5 experts, like legal experts, to get their opinion.
Yeah,
and he weaved it, like I weaved it in my narrative. And so the one I'm going to write tonight,
and I like that. And one of the things, and frankly, it makes both of us good. But the one similarity, because all I do is reach out to people. But when you do reach out to people, is that you have all these people to reach out to, your network, so many people that you've worked with over the years that respect you, that are going to be happy to give you a quote for a column, which I think it makes it that much better. But sorry, go ahead. What were you about to say?
No, I'm saying, hey, I'll give you your hearing aids in 1 minute, baby. Okay, that's my daughter. My daughter came in. Okay, not when you're watching the TV, I promise. Afterwards. Is this me trying to convince my daughter to wear her hearing aids? So I've come up with, she just came into the room.
Can she hear me?
No, she just left.
Oh, because I was going to scream, do you have any idea who the hell I am that your dad's talking to? Hearing aids.
She'll come in and she'll like, you mean nothing to me, bald man. And she just walks away. Like,
she comes in.
I'll crush you.
She comes in, she goes, no, grabs the laptop, slams it shut.
Yeah, we're trying to get her to wear her hearing aids. And I think I finally come up with this amazing barter program where I said, if you wear the hearing aid 1 hour a day and then 2 hours a day in a week, I'll get you whatever Lego Friends Lego set you want. So she's hustling me now. But to get back to what you asked, I think one of the good things about us is like, I think if you treat people well and you reach out to people and we have we have few superhero powers, but we know a lot of folks. I think most people are like, oh, you reached out to me for an important topic. And then once you quote them well, they're like, oh, he did me right.
Yeah.
Right. They come back. And I feel like the piece I'm writing today, I hope I write it well. It's just something that's just been happening. There's so many chaotic things that's happening, but I'm just so disturbed by the rise of anti-Asian hate in this country, where hate crimes have gone up 150%. And I feel like it's one of those things where if I can use this platform in the Daily Beast as a Muslim, as a South Asian, to kind of shed light onto this, maybe I can be a good ally. So that's the piece I'm writing, hopefully tonight, where I'm getting Asian Americans, but also allies of Asian Americans who are like, yo, we got to stand up against this because we share a common foe. The common foe is white supremacy. And it's no coincidence that in the past 2 years, the mainstreaming of hate by the GOP in particular, example, the Chinese flu, coincides with the rise in open hate crimes against Asian Americans. That's the cost of hate.
It's such a cheap hit, divisive, unnecessary, and they're like, well, where do you think it came from? Even if I concede that, yes, let's say we agreed that it came from China. Why on earth are you punching this old Vietnamese lady or Chinese lady in the face in San Francisco? What? On what planet? I was ranting about that last night with no real good point. I was just trying to analyze how someone would take out their anger on a complete stranger, how they connect those dots. And I've just never been able to get there. I think sometimes I feel that way towards people in certain jobs. I'll never do anything, but I think if there's any way I can really, I don't like that guy that does that kind of thing or something. But
that just shows you bigots aren't really the most nuanced of folks, right? And it kind of also shows you how we're in this together, right? Because I'll give you an example, and this is kind of how I want to empathize and lead in with the piece is 9/11 happened. I'm a senior at UC Berkeley. The first two groups that reached out to us, I was student leader one of the student leaders of the Muslim Student Association.
I mean, probably groups that have been minimized or marginalized, but I don't know.
Catholics. So there was a white Catholic woman who reached out and said, we've been through this. And then Japanese Americans have gone through this, right? And then if you saw what happened with the hate crimes, the first hate crime after 9/11, it wasn't against a Muslim, it was against a Sikh man in Arizona, a bearded immigrant, Balbir Singh, who was shot and killed because the guy who killed him wanted to get back and punish those guys who attacked us, right? And so you're right, you're seeing a person born and raised in America, minding their own business, walking the street in New York, getting slashed because of the coronavirus. It's just so remarkably stupid.
That reminds me of the, I just looked it up real quick, 2012 Oak Creek shooting. A gunman killed 6 at a Sikh temple, or Sikh. They've been corrected. I've been corrected. I don't know what to say, how to pronounce it. Temple in Wisconsin. And it's what we're talking about. It's like, it's so bizarre. You're attacking people that don't even believe the religion about the people that you hate, but they have a similar look. It's like unparalleled ignorance that you would follow through. We're all ignorant, but that you would commit violence against somebody you have no idea about.
You just need a target to hit, right? And I think that's what the GOP does really well is we'll take your frustration, we'll take your anger, we'll take your grievance, and we will give you an enemy. And right now, the enemy is cancel culture. And so we won't talk about Asian Americans getting literally slashed in the face. We won't talk about the racism and the racist depiction of Asians in coloring books, Dr. Seuss books in the past. What we're going to talk about is Potato Head. What we're going to talk about is Dr. Seuss.
Yeah.
What we're going to talk about is Mr. Pillow. What we're going to try to cancel are elections. What we're going to try to cancel is critical race theory, if you actually talk about white supremacy. And what we're trying to cancel at CPAC is literally Donald Trump just named all the people that he wanted to cancel, all the Republicans who went after him.
You have a great piece about this at the Beast. It's titled "Let's Have a Cancel Culture for Unrepentant Trumpists." Everybody should read. But it would seem that people are against canceling, quote, canceling. I don't even buy any of it. The people that they agree with, but for canceling other people, and more importantly, canceling entire good ideas. You mentioned the federal government under Trump, an order. A friend of mine at Fish and Wildlife talked openly about this, that they could not talk and have racial awareness workshops. They could not have any kind of continuing education to help fight ignorance. And before that, remember, in Florida and other places, they struck language about climate change. So it's like they're worried about canceling individual, ignorant, hateful, sexual harassing people. And in the meantime, they're canceling entire theories and sciences and ideologies. And then, of course, people, too, as you just mentioned. It's such an imbalance. Sorry for ranting so much.
No, you're Colin Kaepernick. Last time I checked, they canceled Colin Kaepernick, right? So it's this, and this is what, I mean, we've talked about.
Merrick Garland.
Yeah, I mean, they literally canceled Merrick Garland. Exactly. Like, you just go down the list. The canceller in chief was Donald Trump. He canceled the Goodyear tires.
Goodyear tires.
Remember that one? You can just make a list of all the things and people he's canceled.
He did more to damage individual people's reputations and brands in ways that they will, in some ways that they will never get back. Watch, they will never get back. Many of the people that were targeted will never be able to, come back from the damage that he did with a tweet or many tweets.
Remember how he canceled Kathy Griffin? The right.
Oh, it was horrible. Yeah, I know, Kathy. It was horrible.
Yeah. I mean, I don't agree with her statement. Who cares? Whatever. She did some, art. This is for those of you guys remember. She did this pose holding the severed head of a Trump doll, and for that she was just annihilated. And then she lost her gig at CNN, and she said there was a very difficult time. All of her U.S. gigs dried up, and then she had to rebuild herself. She went overseas, got her mojo back, came back after a really tough year. They literally canceled that woman and her career. That was fine. And so, this, you and I talk about this on your show a lot, is this false equivalence, this both sidesing that you would think the powers that be, you would think the media institutions would have learned after 4 years the damage of creating a both sides false equivalence in an asymmetrical reality, and they're still doing it, man. And I just feel it's just painful that the rest of us have to suffer. And now everyone's being canceled. Everyone's using the word cancel culture all the time. It's just we predicted, it's become the new political incorrect.
You know what I want to do with you is take the interview that Bill Maher did with Megyn Kelly and just go through it and press play and then stop. Did you see that by any chance?
I've seen the highlights because I stopped watching Bill Maher a long time ago. But then right when I saw him invite, I'm like, I know what they're going to talk about. They're probably going to talk about white people being aggrieved.
The suffering of white people. And I do want to say this. I want to just say two things can be true. White people suffer badly all the time in every way. All of the white people I know many of the white people I know are suffering terribly right now. Many that are very close to me. So we can all talk about our individual journey and so on, but this giant narrative that is really taking hold, that white folks feel they're more discriminated, they're more aggrieved than people of color, is the worst trend that is on the up, that is growing outside of kind of, other conspiracy theories. I guess that classically could be called one. It's terrible. And I just, that back and forth, I'd love to play that for you and have you react to it. And
we should do that.
Yeah, I should have planned it, but
it's been consistent throughout American history, right? I mean, just look at the Civil War. Is that those who were secessionists, those who were traitors, thought they were the greatest victims, and in order to appease their economic anxiety, pretty much we've been hijacked in this country for the past 140, 160 years, right? We're at a systemic disadvantage, a structural disadvantage, where the majority is held hostage by the minority, and the minority is fueled overwhelmingly by white rage, right? Like the filibuster, case in point. Economic anxiety, that endless zombie trope that we had to deal with for the past 5 years, right? The fact that white people felt that they were the ones aggrieved during segregation, the fact that they were the ones aggrieved after the end of segregation. Just a couple of years ago, NPR did a poll that said a majority of white people, was like 56%, think they're the most victimized group in America right now. It's wild. And we've talked about this before. When you've been in power your whole life, equality looks like oppression. There used to be, my daddy and my granddaddy used to be the heads of the board, and now we've lost out.
And they've been being told this by Rush Limbaugh for 30 years, like 2 generations of Americans, and before that too, have been told this narrative, and it gets them to behave a certain way, gets them, of course, to vote a certain way and think a certain way. It's not true. It's not even remotely true, any of it. And there's some, yeah, but it's very effective in it. And it has, it's just constantly being whispered, or I should say screamed at them on the radio and TV.
Which is why cancel culture, I mean, I think we talked about this where we predicted that this is going to be huge. I think this was last year. I said it. I said cancel culture is going to replace political incorrectness.
Yes.
It's going to be a massive boon for the right wing. They're going to go all in on grievance. They're going to win elections off it. I think they will. And, think about it. Like, they are canceling your culture, your heritage, your identity. They took away the Confederate flag. Now they took away your votes because they're lying and cheating. Now they're taking away your children's books. Now they're taking away My Pillow. They're even taking away your kid's gender. They took away Mr. Potato Head's nards. They're going to take away your son's penis too. They're going to take away everything that you believe in, and there's nothing you can do. So you have to fight back, and you have to storm the Capitol and take back this country.
It's such a it's such a distracting argument. I hate it so much because you don't know anybody who's been canceled. And the thing that you like that got canceled, you don't miss. You do not miss the Washington football emblem logo. You do not sit around and shed tears over it. The thing, you don't miss the Confederate flag. You actually don't. It actually does not bother you. It does not affect you. You know what you do miss? Your health care, a good job opportunity, a good educational opportunity, paying way too much for college. These things that affect all of us. And you're over here talking about cancel culture, which is a thing that's actually not affecting you or anybody that you personally even really know. The white people aren't sitting around like, did you hear about what happened to Mike? He got canceled. You don't use that in reference to people you know because it's not a thing in your life. But it is a thing in your life. All those issues that I mentioned that that they're not talking about or trying to solve. Kevin McCarthy yesterday on the House floor. Democrats are more worried about Dr. Seuss. No, Democrats didn't. That was the fucking Dr. Seuss company that took those books back because Seuss himself was like, I'm not so proud of some of my work.
And his family supports it, right? And if you look at tying everything full circle, if you look at some of those books, has some blatantly anti-Asian depictions that
I had no idea. I was surprised. Yeah. I never saw that, noticed it. I saw Ellie Mistal tweeted about it, like black people always know with these certain books, but fine.
Disney cartoons, Looney Tunes cartoons, we all saw it, but look, you could still rent it. I mean, if you deeply care that much. And also another thing, why is this part of your culture? Like, why are you defending this? So, like, I'm going to go all in and I'm going to double down for these racist caricatures in a Dr. Seuss book that I never knew existed until now.
Because they're not thinking about, to be fair, they're not them. They're thinking we're canceling, the places you go. And some guy yelled at me on Twitter, just tell me what's wrong. What's racist about Cat in the Hat? I go, I don't think anybody's talking about Cat in the Hat. I don't think.
No one is. No one is. And even Mr. Potato, Hasbro had to offer like a clarification. They're not canceling Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head. They still exist. They're just offering now Potato Head, which makes sense, right? It's just like, whatever. No, who cares?
Can you imagine like being in an argument and screaming at the other person and within your rage, the words potato head come out of your mouth?
No, I tweeted that today. I literally tweeted, you can watch TV, my love. Okay, but without the hearing aid. Okay? And Uncle Pete says,
say my full name.
Okay, after the TV.
Just tell her you're talking to Mehdi Hassan. It might make a difference.
I'm talking to Mehdi Uncle, okay? So we have to be quiet for 2 minutes. Now she got quiet. All right, close the door. All right, thank you, my love.
Say it's Joyanne Reed.
You like that? That's why I said Mehdi. He goes, okay. She just walked away. He goes, Pete, I don't respect Pete. Tell Dominic to wait.
Isn't he the warm-up comedian for Craft Corner Deathmatch?
Yeah. She's like, Pete Dominic, psh, he can wait. Dude, I did this tweet today, and literally right after I did the tweet, I think the tweet's still up. I have to see it, where I said, it's literally what you said. I said, we're dealing with a recession, we're dealing with COVID, and we're dealing with all these problems. Meanwhile, on the right, we're dealing with freaking Dr. Seuss, My Pillow, and Potato Head. And then the next tweet I did, he goes, I can't believe I just tweeted that. We literally are living in like the third realm of hell or something. That's how incredibly stupid we are. This is where we are, man. It's painful, but it works. Look, the GOP knows they have no solutions. They have no ideas. Let's remind people that 0 Republicans in the House voted for the stimulus package. 0, right? The moderates offered a $600 check for Americans, right? So in the absence of any real progress, any real change, any real ideas, How do you galvanize the base? And this is all they had. They literally, I'm using the word literally as is meant to be used, during a pandemic that has killed 500 million people, they're talking about Mr. Potato Head and Dr. Seuss. And my fear is this is going to work. My fear is they're going to, because look, I'm a student of U.S. history. Fear works for them, man. 2004 election, them gays are going to get married. 2020 election, defund the police. And in 2022, it's going to be, they're going to take away your kid's pronouns. Your son's going to wear a dress. He's going to become a T.
The only way to make it not come true or to beat that, all those things I think you said will happen and they will be effective. But the only way to combat that is to give people stuff. And if that sounds like some big government liberal, fine, whatever you want. But by stuff, I mean opportunity to succeed in life so that they're not distracted by these other things and going down these rabbit holes. I mean, I firmly believe if people have some semblance of contentment, joy, and security, they're not going to need to feel so aggrieved if they can afford their health care, if they can pay their bills. So pass things through the Senate, kill the filibuster, and get shit done. Get a jobs, a huge infrastructure bill done. Put people to work. Is that the only way forward? I feel
Republicans know this, which is why just today it was reported that they're going to use all the procedural weapons to basically extend the debate on this package and extend it by several days. They're just going to use every single measure they have.
I say that backfires. That's going to this is so overwhelmingly approved by the vast majority of Americans.
100%. Well, it might. So what they're doing is they're taking a play from the Obama administration, where McConnell made a vow that he was going to obstruct. And what happened in the midterms, 2010 midterms, is as a result of their obstruction, they said, see, you guys elected Democrats, they got nothing done for you. I do agree with you. I think this time, based on the immense crisis that we are in and the fact that it is well known that Republicans are just not doing anything, I do think this is going to backfire. But at the same time, you have to ask yourself, what do we do in a democracy when one of the political parties just does not seem to care about governing, does not care about a majority of the population, does not care about their well-being, cares instead about conspiracy theories, making a golden calf out of Donald Trump, tax cuts for the rich, and Dr. Seuss. And it goes back to your point that if we just had freaking Joe Manchin, who cared more about the people than perhaps winning another tight election in West Virginia. Imagine, suppose Joe Manchin said, you know what? I'm going to martyr myself. I'm going to martyr my political career. I'm going to go all out. I will give you a rubber stamp, Joe Biden. I'll be that vote. I'll kill the filibuster. And in 2 years, you know what we'll do? We'll pass the Voting Rights Act that will get more Democrats to vote. We'll do something on climate change. You don't have to do infrastructure through reconciliation. We'll pass a stimulus package. We'll give people checks. We'll give people jobs. We'll protect healthcare. We're going to make DC into a state, which is going to get you 2 more Democratic senators. And you know what? If that means I don't get to be senator in West Virginia anymore, I go out a hero. But we're not going to get that. Instead, we're going to be hijacked by the quote-unquote moderate Democrats. And man, I'm worried about democracy. I'm worried about 2022 because basically Biden's whole plan is this. I will stick through and get the stimulus package done either this month or next month. That will be a huge win for me and the Democrats.
It's got to be done, and it's got to be done this month. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Then I'm going to reopen America by the fall. Yeah. I'm going to get everyone vaccinated. Yeah. Those will be my 2 wins. And then maybe through reconciliation, I'll push through infrastructure, spend money, get some jobs, and maybe, inshallah, God willing, that'll be enough, just enough by 2022 for Democrats to win. Meanwhile, on the other side, more than 200 bills have been introduced to restrict voting in Georgia, in Arizona, all across this country, with gerrymandering, and also with a hostile 2022 map and history behind us, which says that the governing party loses. And so we got 2 years, man. And I don't. Do you feel confident? What do you feel? How do you feel?
I have this weird feeling about how it's not based in any kind of political science and there's not a lot of history to it, but we've been under this gray cloud of the pandemic and of the new normal and living this way for so long. And for most people, it's really, really hard. And there's going to be a certain release this summer and after that. And I wonder how that affects the economy as well. I wonder how people have a sense of perspective of how bad it was. And I feel like that is going to put people in a better place to feel about the world, the country, and the future. However, I think then there's going to be another, 10 months that pass or a year after that kind of elation and that kind of boost. And that all depends on what happens. But I think that Democrats learned a lot from this last two rounds elections, the midterms, as well as recently what happened in the runoff in Georgia. None of us thought that was going to be possible. And you wrote a piece back in November about, who we need to target as Democrats. And I think the Stacey Abrams she gets, tremendous, probably too much credit because there's so many amazing people working around her and doing similar things. And I think that Democrats have learned a lot about how to take action locally and in states. And I don't know if any of that makes sense and we could break it all down, but my optimism does lie in the last two election rounds and what we've learned and how to target people, as well as what I just said about the good news with the vaccine and the world changing back to, quote, normal to some extent.
And also Ronald Klain, chief of staff, probably the most powerful person in the Biden's administration, right? Absent him and Kamala Harris, the vice president, also has that memory of Republican obstructionism, of how they tried their hardest to be bipartisan, and each time they were rebuffed. And that Republican Party has become even more extreme and radical. So, it's one of those situations where we get frustrated. And I think it's okay to get frustrated that there wasn't more of a push for the minimum wage, the fact that $15 is even being considered, the fact that, we're still at $7.25. But at the same time, the pragmatist in me, and knowing how politics works, unfortunately, very slowly, is if Biden can get the stimulus package done, and unfortunately, it seems it's going to be a little bit more weak, but $1,400, man, goes a long way. I know for a fact that people are relying upon that money.
Yeah.
And if he gets this thing reopened with his aggressive belief in science and vaccines, and of course, they restore some dignity, and there's more accountability, and there's some, I hope, some legal cases brought on by the DOJ and also the New York State against Trump and his allies. You add all that up, and maybe if it can get through even infrastructure through reconciliation, maybe that might be enough to barely hang on to a win in 2022. And if he gets that win, and maybe he gets, cross your fingers, he gets 51 Dems, then you don't need to rely on Manchin, right? And I think by that time, I hope, the Republican Party has proven itself to be such a hostile extremist force cosplaying as a political party that the Democrats will be forced to do the right thing. That even Manchin might say, I tried for 2 years to be an independent. I tried for 2 years to play it right. I tried for 2 years to do everything. But West Virginia, I need to get you jobs. In order to get you jobs, I got to end the filibuster. So I think we got to take it for 2 years. It's okay for us to be frustrated. And we have to keep pushing. And the last thing I'll say is the reason why it's important to push is I remember it was actually Obama who said this to a friend of mine who was in DHS, and it was the White House iftar several years ago. And it was during the iftar where he said, how come you don't do
Which is the White House celebrating the Muslim holiday, right?
It used to happen, right? But then literally Trump canceled it. It was happening since Jefferson. Jefferson did the first one, allegedly. So Obama told them, we all know what we have to do, but you have to push me to do the right thing. And politicians say that all the time. You have to push us oftentimes to do the right thing, right? We have to get reelected.
Yes.
We need funders. We need the majority. We know oftentimes we know what has to be done. But if the will's not there, we won't do it.
You need public support to change public opinion, and you need actually grassroots organizers to actually get it done. And every single person can make a difference. So I think
this is why with the minimum wage here, you look at the polling, man. A majority of Americans are like, we support this. Even in Florida, the minimum wage was raised, right? This is Florida, right? I think it's inevitable that this happens. But the frustration and why I think this is good to have this type of righteous rage is why are we even debating $15 measly in 2021, especially during a pandemic and crisis? And if we just had some Dems who are willing to take Republicans to the mattresses, but that's just not how it works.
Well, I think you might be wrong about that last part. I think there's a lot of people that did not come to play in both the House, Senate, and especially these cabinet secretaries. And you mentioned Ron Klain. He definitely didn't come to play.
He did not come to play.
Yeah.
No. He knows what's up, man.
Yeah.
He knows what's up.
All right, buddy, I'll let you go. Thank you, as always, for talking to me. I love talking to you. I get really excited to talk to you, and you're just one of my favorite people. Keep doing great work. I'll talk to you soon.
Hey, let's do a clubhouse soon.
Yes, sir. There he goes. Wajahat Ali. Go say hi to him on Twitter. Tell him how much you enjoy when he joins me. And thank you for listening. Thank you so much for sharing the podcast with your friends and for supporting it with a paid subscription and for raising your subscription from $5 to $10 like so many of you have. Putting in 5 shows a week, 5 live shows a week, and loving it. It's a lot, but I'm really enjoying it and always want to hear from you. I hope to see you tonight at the Hangout. That's tonight at 8 East. If you are a stand-up subscriber, you'll get the show link, the Zoom link, and I will see you this evening. Always look forward to Thursday nights to hang out with stand-up subscribers. All right, that's it. John Carroll, will you take us away with the stand-up theme song?
When the tyrants taunt you and the sirens teach you, better stand up, stand up. Let the brave meet the challenge, let the weak flee. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. When you're tired of begging, saying pretty please, that's the time you gotta finally get up on your knees. When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up, stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. You got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw the land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up. We got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up. You got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well, and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up, stand up. Got to stand up. Ooh, come on, just stand up. Everybody got to stand up in the darkest hour. Stand up, people got the power. Stand up. Come on, 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 come on. Stand up.
And now here is a 4-minute clip from the Biography Channel's YouTube channel about Dr. Seuss, the 9th best-selling fiction author of all time.
Ted Geisel was an American original. He entertained generations of children and adults. We're not going to see the likes of him again.
Theodore Seuss Geisel adopted the name Dr. Seuss during his senior year at Dartmouth, where he served as editor of the school's humor magazine.
One spring evening, he and some friends were caught drinking gin in his room by the dean, who then removed Geisel from his editorship and said he could no longer contribute cartoons. So, of course, Ted Geisel continued to contribute, but using different names. And one of those names was Seuss.
Ted married Helen Palmer in 1927, and the couple moved to New York City.
Before Seuss was a famous children's writer, he was a famous ad man. He did advertising for many companies, and in fact, that's the way he made his money for the first 20 years of his children's book career.
Geisel's first book, And to Think That I Saw It on Mulberry Street, was rejected by every publisher he showed it to. He was about to throw the book away when he ran into a friend on the street.
His friend said, "Oh, well, I'm with Vanguard Press. Show it to me." And the rest is history.
Geisel put children's book writing on hold in 1940 to draw political cartoons.
He attacked racism, he attacked anti-Semitism, he attacked fascism, and the isolationists who said this war wasn't our problem, we need not get involved.
At 38 years old, Geisel was too old for the draft, but he was committed to helping the war effort. On January 7, 1943, Dr. Seuss became Captain Theodore Geisel of the United States Army.
He became part of the Information and Education Division and took charge of the animation unit.
In 1957, Geisel was challenged to create a new reading primer that children would enjoy more than watching television. Geisel would have to contain the book to 225 words.
So Ted took this list of words, all unrelated words, and he ran his eye down just looking for something that rhymed, and there was cat, there was hat. Boing.
The success of The Cat in the Hat launched the beginner book series for Random House. Geisel served as president of the new division and edited Are You My Mother and the Berenstain Bears as part of the series. Seuss's own contributions to the series are his most popular, including Green Eggs and Ham and One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish.
I think what makes a book a classic is pure excellence, and his books certainly fall into that category. But I also think it's because people want to revisit them again and again.
While his work was booming, his wife Helen had been struggling with health problems for years. But by 1967, there were other strains on the relationship.
Ted Geisel fell in love with Audrey Diamond, and they had an affair. And Helen found out. And in the wake of that knowledge, and also because she felt like she was no longer the woman she was before those illnesses, she killed herself. Then Audrey, later that year, divorced her husband, and the next year married Ted Geisel.
In 1984, Geisel was awarded a Pulitzer Prize for his special contribution to children's literature.
I got this wonderful note from him saying, "See, I'm not just a kids writer, I'm a people writer."
Theodore Seuss Geisel died on September 24, 1991. His books have been translated into 20 languages and inspired feature films and a Broadway musical.
Theodore Seuss Geisel had a voice unlike any other, and that voice of Ted's echoes in the head not only of every child who has those books read to her or him, but to any adult who has had the thrill of reading them. And it was a thrill to have known him.
Sounds like the Biography Channel left out some of the other ugly parts, but all right, that was interesting. Bye-bye. See you tomorrow.
doing great work. I'll talk to you soon.
Hey, let's do a clubhouse soon.
Done.